Guys, hi, I'm Robin. I don't think we've been introduced, but I am a student at Earlium Academy, but actually I've been doing a little bit more than just studying, and I'm starting to feel like they're on to me, guys. I won't sit here and lie and say that I'm a goody two shoes because I've definitely done my fair share of assassination work, but I try to make sure that most of them are most of them deserve it. Okay, that's valid, right? So I've been at this academy for a few years now, and this has been like perfect. I have always wanted to study. I'm so happy that I get this opportunity, and this is a breeding ground for assassination requests. I have had to get rid of some rivals, some academic rivals, gotten to enact some revenge on behalf of somebody who's had their coursework stolen from them. I have been having a great time over here, but I feel like lately, whenever I've been on a job, there's been this sense that somebody's been watching me. So this semester, I think I'm gonna have to like fully immerse into my cover, basically cover story, be the full-on student because I don't know what's gonna happen otherwise. And the big issue is that my big boss has asked for a meeting in 2 weeks' time. And so I don't know what's going to happen, guys, because I would love to just lie low, but I'm afraid that I'm going to be given some sort of an assignment. And if it's the big boss who's going to give it to me directly, I'm not going to be able to lie low. So now, when it comes to my coursework, I have over the past few years been focusing on two particular callings. I've been working towards the Rift Architect and the Illusionist Rogue calling. Officially, I was only enrolled as Rift Architect, but I took all the compulsory classes needed in order to also be an Illusionist Rogue. I just don't hold the degree for it. But yeah, all good things have to come to an end, so I didn't end up finish those callings, so I had to go in a new direction. So since this year, I've been starting my higher calling to become a space astronaut because, you girls are always going to be ahead of the curve, right? Space is the next frontier and it's going to happen. There's going to be somebody who needs to go to space to do some sort of an assassination job. And then I'm going to be ready to take that position immediately. But so, yeah, I'm doing the space astronaut calling, which means that for my coursework, there's a lot of reading involved in terms of sci-fi. I basically have to read a lot of sci-fi or books with space in the title or books with stars on the cover. I mainly have sci-fi physically, though I do have some access to this wonderful thing called audiobooks. And there I'll have much more options in terms of stars on the cover at least. I haven't really got one with space in the title, but I might stumble upon one. I'm not going to really go over the audiobook options. I'm just going to go over the physical options I have at my disposal. And I do also have two complementary classes that I could take, though one of them I might not actually touch any of those prompts. So let's start with the sci-fi, okay? First up, we've got Operation Bounce House by Matt Dinneman. I don't know anything about this book. Matt Dinneman is the author of the Dungeon Crawler Crawl series, which is sort of like lit RPG style storytelling, but I don't know whether this is the same for Operation Bounce House. It's his most recent publication. It's outside of that series, and it is part of the Broken Binding SFF. I think it was the February or January book for that. And so it is one that I still have to get to, and so this is now the opportune time to pick it up. I didn't necessarily have much of an interest in this book, and this is part of the reason why I have stopped the subscription is because when it's part of the subscription, even when I don't necessarily think it's like it's a book that I would pick up myself if I saw it on shelves, then I'm still like, but maybe it will surprise me, and then I end up getting the book, and then it becomes a burden on my TBR. Next up, a book that really suits me, an assassin story. So the last contract of Isako. Our protagonist is a 50-year-old assassin, and so we are following her on her one final job. So yes, hopefully whatever the big boss is going to come to propose to me isn't going to be my very last job, right? And then the final sort of like sci-fi, maybe it's more dystopian, but I'll consider it for the sci-fi prompt option on my shelves is The Infinite State by Richard Swan. I have read two other Richard Swans. I've tried to read the Justice of Kings, but I didn't really get along with that. And then I did read Steel Gods. No, Steel Gods is a sequel, right? I don't really remember the date. The Grave Empire. And I really did enjoy The Grave Empire. So I even got the sequel from The Broken Binding in a matching edition. So I definitely absolutely enjoyed that one. And so I'm hoping that this one is going to be right up my alley again. This is authoritarian regime that I suppose we're going to try and pull down. And then, as I indicated, there are two complementary classes that I can also take. And so one of these is alchemy, and the other one is astronomy. I think for astronomy, I don't really have anything, but alchemy is the one for which I do have 3 books on my physical shelf that I could get to for it. The first one is to read a book with a red cover. This is not the most read cover on my shelves, but it is a book that I want to read. So this is The Bone Shard Daughter, first book in the Drowning Empire series by Andrea Stewart. I need to get to these books. These are rereads, but the third book in the series is going to be new to me, so I need to get started on my reread in order to be able to get to that final book within the series. So in this one, we have an authoritarian emperor who basically demands a bone sacrifice from all of his subjects when they turn 13, I believe. So they give like a little bone behind their ear, and these bones are used by the emperor and his son to create these constructs. And his daughter is somebody who he basically doesn't really look towards at all. He doesn't barely gives her any attention. She is not entitled to the knowledge of how to use this bone shard magic. She will be trying to figure it out on her own. Then the second prompt within that class, so the second level to get a higher degree, would be to read a book with a supernatural element, and for that I'm going to be reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, because fairies are supernatural beings. And so this is a cozy fantasy by the author of Agnes Albert's Mystical Cat Shelter. I read that, I was disappointed, and I hope that because everybody had been praising this one for years, that this one is just going to turn out to be better, and that Agnes Albert was just sort of like a disappointment for people who have read and loved Emily Wilde. But I just haven't stumbled upon any examples of people who have read Emily Wilde and who've also already read Agnes Albert. I've stumbled upon other people who have read Agnes Albert alone and who are disappointed, but not yet on anybody who has read both of them. Though I should actually check, because I was gifted this book by Daniela from the channel Only for a Page, and she is currently, or has already finished in the meantime, Agnes Albert, and she gifted me this book, which was in her possession before, so she can make the comparison, so I should check with her as well. And then the final one for that class is to read a book with a poisonous object. And so I'm going to be reading The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovalino, because in my version of this story, either the sword or the blade is poisoned. And I do have not semi-confirmation, but hesitation on the side of somebody who has read this book before and who was like, actually, you may be right. In any case, a blade can be poisonous, so I consider this a poisonous object, because even when there is like something on the cover that's like, even if there's like a snake on the cover or something like that, you're allowed to count that, but not all snakes are poisonous. So I don't think that Gia said that we need to like specify whether the item actually is poisonous. I'm going to go for it could be poisonous. In my version of the story, that's a poisonous blade that she's carrying. This is a story of a knight and a mage. The mage is basically a source of power that the knight can tap into in his fight against I don't know what, but the mage is secretly also the heir to the throne, I think. The sequel to this is about to come out. But I do believe that they are companion novels, so I might not be interested in getting to the sequel at all. But on the other hand, the sequel also has a gorgeous cover, but I don't think that I'll go for it actually, because actually what I didn't really like this cover. I don't really like the vibe of this type of cover. I love the original cover way more. So it's interesting that the sequel cover that The Broken Binding has announced, which is basically very similar to this style of cover, is then one that I do actually vibe with. But so yeah, that's going to be most of my reading. So I'm just going to be the book nerd, scholarly student, diligently at work on getting all of her books read, because that should hide the fact that I'm also a power-hungry mercenary assassin who definitely lives for the money, right? But so yeah, if you hear any hints of somebody who is onto the path of some sort of an assassin at work in Aurelian Academy, please, please, please let me know, because I need to, if I cannot fool this person, I need to find them and get them out of the way, right? Wish me luck.